find the courage to bring your voice into the world in this medium.
Yeah.
Find
Absolutely.
the courage to start your own podcast. You have it within you to do it. You have something awesome to say. You are uniquely qualified, literally. And there is an audience that wants to hear you and your message.
Hey there, mompreneurs. I hope you are doing well. This is your host, Angela Michuli of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I am so happy you are here. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on women in podcasting. And if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and listen to it in connection with this episode where I interview podcasting pro Angela Kelly Smith from Podcast Launchpad, who makes it her mission to teach women how to podcast. And we dive into why it's so important that women enter the podcasting space as podcasters and even listeners. But one thing I love about Kelly even more is how much she owns her confidence and her expertise in podcasting. And to me, she's just such a role model for that to anyone who's doing anything, especially women. So without further ado, here's my interview with Angela Kelly Smith. Angela Kelly Smith, you go by Kelly. Welcome to the podcast. I am so delighted to have you and have this conversation. I always say that, but I am. I mean, I feel so lucky to have conversations and a platform to talk to people doing amazing things that otherwise I wouldn't have the opportunity or a reason to have this conversation, even though I would have so many questions in my head. So thank you for your time. Welcome to the podcast. This is going to be good. Get out your notepad. So.
True. Yes. I'm going to be sharing, well, we both are going to be sharing some great tips about podcasting. And thank you so much for having me here, Angela. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure is all mine. So why don't we, before we dive in, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you and what all the amazing things you're doing, so we can understand why we need to be listening to you and why this conversation is so important right now.
I will just tell a little bit so we can dive in. So I am the host of Podcast Launchpad, which is a podcast to help women entrepreneurs start and grow their own podcast using podcasts as a marketing for their business. I'm also the co-host of Geek Girl Soup. I've been there since 2012. I am a podcast coach and consultant. So again, helping women entrepreneurs launch and grow their podcast, primarily as a marketing tool for their business, though I've helped other women start podcasts for other purposes, for a book or for fun.
I love that. Yes. And you and I connected at PodFest in 2023 here in Orlando. And I just wanted to thank you for connecting, but also having this conversation has made me realize how important podcasting has been in my entrepreneurial journey. And the goal of this conversation is to help listeners understand if there's any part of you that wants to start a podcast. I hope that this podcast will give you permission to do that. And there are people out there to help you do it. What gave you the encouragement to start your first podcast in your business? Because I think that that's a really good place to start.
So my business podcast was a live interview-based podcast with Blog Talk Radio for part of 2012 and 13. So I didn't run it very long because honestly, I didn't have a great why for it or a great strategy for it. I loved it. A lot of fun. I loved the energy of doing live. I had some really good guests on there. A couple of guests didn't show up. And I'm sitting there in the system. I had a live audience. For the first one, I wasn't prepared with a backup topic. Oh my gosh. So I'm just sitting there talking to them, made something up on the fly. The second time that it happened, I was prepared. But so I didn't keep that going. And the next time I started a podcast for my business, I was prepared. I had a good why. I had a plan for it. And it was much better. So I had been blogging and blogging is great, but I love speaking. I love public speaking in front of audiences. And I just thought I want to reach a wider audience using my literal voice so people can hear my personality, really get to know me and not just through my writing. Even though I love writing, it's hard to get your personality across in writing unless it's creative writing. But sharing informational content in blogs, oh my gosh, so difficult to get your personality across, no matter how good a writer you are. But in a podcast, you're sharing your emotions, your inflections, your way, if you have a quirky way of saying things, just your own voice, your own way of talking. So people really get to know you through your podcast.
Right. They do. And so did you feel confidence in starting your podcast? Did you feel like, where were you emotionally when you started down that journey?
So I had already started podcasting with Geek beginning of 2012. Some buddies had started it 2 months earlier, and I joined them, never having listened to a podcast before, not knowing what I was doing. Figured things out quickly. I had experience in editing because I was a professional artist and filmmaker on the side. And again, loved speaking. So just dove in. Starting my own, I was Googling stuff. There was not much information out there back then. And there was really no one to turn to get help. So I just went through. It was daunting. It was scary, especially doing it live. I had been doing live teleseminars back. This was before webinars, but going live with guests and then posting it as a podcast, to be cool. It was really scary. And it would have been great to have help. I mean, doing Geek Girl Sleep Buddies, that was different because I had buddies, we muddled through together. And it's daunting. It's like, well, people really want to listen. Who am I to be doing this? That type of thing.
Right. Yeah. So how has podcasting empowered you to the point where you've gone from who's going to want to listen to me to I need to teach women how to do this?
Gosh. So it got to the point where when clients and colleagues found out how long I'd been podcasting, they would start asking me, how do you start a podcast? Or can you recommend a course? And I was like, well, I never took a course. I just learned by doing. And literally, and while I had Googled how to do a live podcast, or I Googled information on Blog Talk Radio, I never Googled how to podcast because I just did it. And later, I would Google things about improving this and audio growth and audience growth and things like that. How-tos, we originally just did. And then again, looked stuff up over time to improve. And so, no, I couldn't recommend a course. And so finally, I'm like, clearly there is demand and they're wanting my help. So I started teaching people, taking on clients, and then started the podcast so that I could get the information out there, because I really want to make it easy for people. I want to stop the Googling, because the Googling is so overwhelming. Everyone has, I mean, there is a way to do it. You know, there is like a standard way to podcast. But as far as what equipment to use, what platforms to use, what software to use, you have so many options. And it's not that my suggestions are the very best ones. It's like you need to find someone you trust and go with what they recommend.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's got their person. And, you know, if you have something to teach somebody, there is somebody who wants to learn it for sure. So you teach women how to podcast specifically. That's kind of your focus, which I love. So let's talk about why it's so critical that women enter the podcasting space. So can you talk about that for a minute?
When I started out in 2012, only about 10% of podcasts were hosted by a woman, even one woman. Today, about 30% of podcasts are hosted by a woman. 30. So yes, that's significant growth in, what is that, 11 years. But that's still not enough. Half of all podcast listeners are women, at least half. That's a discrepancy then. Women like listening to other women. It's not that we don't like listening to men. It's not that we can't learn from men, but we want to listen to other women. And when it comes to learning information, when we're listening to informational podcasts, it really helps to learn from other women. So take what you're teaching in your show. You are teaching other moms how to start and flourish as a CEO in their own business while overcoming the challenges of, or managing the challenges of motherhood and family. A man can't teach that. Single mom, I mean, a single woman, not a single mom, a childless mother. Sorry. Oh my God. Let's get that right. A woman without children, a woman without children cannot teach that. And it's learning about entrepreneurship from a man or a woman without children is very, very different when you have kids. I was in a coaching program years ago with a woman who didn't have kids. What she told us moms in the group was, if you're really serious about your business, you'll hire a nanny. Wow. Yeah. So I don't want to listen to a podcast that may send out that same message for moms.
Yes.
I want to listen to podcasts that can really relate to me. Again, I listen to shows by men and by women who don't have kids. I listen to a variety of podcasts. But when it comes to something very specific, I want to relate to that person. We all want to see people in movies and TV shows who look like us, who have stories like ours, right? Same in podcasting.
Absolutely.
We want to hear stories that are similar to ours that we can really relate to, even in informational podcasts. So we need way more women in podcasting. And all y'all listening can help make that happen.
Absolutely.
You can.
Absolutely. So, okay, we now know we can learn how to podcast, the importance of women entering the podcast. So let's talk about the intimacy of podcasting and how it is important for business growth, because usually, you know, it's great to just have a podcast, but quickly you learn that there is so much more. It opens the door to courses or events or, you know, speaking, a number of other things. So can we talk about the intimacy of podcasting and where you're meeting people as a listener and why that's important?
Yes. Absolutely. So as an entrepreneur, I recommend using your podcast as a marketing tool for your business. So it's why most entrepreneurs have a blog. You're using your blog to boost your SEO. The more pages you have on your website, particularly new pages that you're updating frequently or new content that you're putting out regularly and frequently, Google finds that and makes your site more discoverable. Same thing with a podcast. So that's one thing. People are finding you more easily. And then now I know you're talking about the intimacy of podcasting. So talking to your listeners, they are really getting to know you, as we already said. They're getting to like you and trust you. So that know, like, trust factor. When they have listened to you enough and want to come check out your website, your services, your lead magnet, a webinar, a Facebook group, whatever it is that you want to promote through your website, not as an infomercial, never as an infomercial, but over the course of your podcast, because as a marketing tool, you need to be promoting yourself, your services, whatever it is you want to do to move listeners into the community that you quote own. So your list, your clients, that type of thing. Then you've got that relationship going. And when they come to you in a Facebook group or a discovery call or sales call, they feel like they already know you. And they often even tell you that. I get that from my potential clients or people just chatting. I just met a woman at an in-person event a few days ago who said that she's been listening to my show. She didn't even know I was going to be there. She says, "Oh my gosh, I listened to your show." And that was amazing. I love it when blah, blah, blah. And she mentioned something from an episode. And so, yeah, it was like, oh my gosh. And I didn't know her, but we had that thing in common that was mine that we got to chat about. So that intimacy is really important. Speaking to or even with your listeners, definitely not just putting out all of this information like you're giving a lecture, but really having a conversation with them, which can be tough because y'all are sitting there. And if it's a solo episode, Angela will be sitting here giving you this information, but you do it in a conversational way. Again, not like a classroom lecture. And it's so powerful from listening to Angela.
I know the first time, actually, I was at PodFest and somebody recognized me, and that's the first time it's ever happened. And I just honestly kind of freaked out because we do sit here and put out content, and it can feel very one-sided, except for like reviews or if somebody sends you a DM or an email or whatnot. So that is just really incredible how you can connect. And I just got a message yesterday from somebody, and it's incredible where you can meet people at and connect with them. And I recently saw a quote that was, "We have enough content. What we need is connection." And that is truly what I think podcasting just almost instantly provides you with, no matter what your purpose is, whether it's just sharing stories or if you do have, if your podcast is part of a funnel or whatnot. So,
exactly. And that's another way that podcasting is like, I really recommend it over blogging, because it is that connection, like you just said.
Right.
You could put the content out as the blog or as a podcast, same content,
right?
But the blog doesn't connect with people anywhere near like the podcast connects with people.
Right. And I think I saw some content that you recently shared that we are so busy. And one of the amazing things about podcasts is that we can multitask while listening. And it's one of the few forms of content that people are listening to in its entirety. And that is incredible, to be able to keep somebody's attention on a YouTube video or have them read your entire blog. It's probably not going to happen. And so I, just like today, I went on a walk and I listened to a podcast. And so I can do multiple things at a time, but still I'm learning, I'm engaging, I'm doing what I need to do, but it's an incredible medium. It's so powerful. So what do you think are some of the benefits of being a female podcast host? Like, why do you think that that is so powerful?
So we already mentioned a little bit about that when talking about, why we need more women in podcasting. So first, that women do want to listen to other women. Right. So simply putting yourself into the podcasting arena, starting your own podcast, there are going to be women looking for you. You'll put your podcast out there and it's going to be like, okay. Mostly, listeners don't know how few women there are in podcasting. So they're going to be like, oh, God, yes, another woman. But, they're happy to see that content provided by a woman and want to connect with that woman podcaster and finally, get that information that she's looking for from a woman instead of all the bros out there sharing similar information, right? Bro energy is so different from women's energy on the whole. Yes. It is. Nothing wrong with the bro energy, but it can be much.
It can be much. Yeah. And the thing is that I think there's probably always this point in any podcaster's experience where they hate the sound of their voice and they hate, for me, I can tend to be a very soft-spoken person. And I thought, and I had worked in a corporate environment that had kind of taught me, unless I had this aggressive, assertive personality, that nobody would want to listen to me. Nobody would want to follow me. Nobody. And so podcasting for me personally has not only allowed me to find my physical voice, but to really cut through that, because there is somebody for everybody. Yes. There truly is. So no matter if you think you have a weird voice or whatnot, and before an interview, my guest goes, I just want to let you know, I love your voice. I don't know what it is. And I was just like, what? And so, it was at a time where, that really important it was within my first 10 episodes. It is in that time where you're just like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I am just doing it. I don't know who's going to listen, who's going to care. So absolutely, it can help you find your voice. And one thing, and then, it's something where people usually have a very hard time with putting themselves out there. And it is a way where you can put yourself out there that it is less intimidating. It's still scary. Don't get me wrong. Yes. You press publish on your first episodes and you're going to be in cold sweats. That's okay.
Yeah. Like, did I really just do that?
Right?
Did I say that? Oh my God. How many people are going to hear this?
But trust me, nobody will criticize what you have to publish like you will. So totally. Yes. And then too, I heard about a John Hopkins study that said, in building confidence, one of the things that you can do is kind of have an alter ego. And I really think that podcasting somehow allows you to do that. You create kind of like this podcast persona that helps you gain confidence. So I really want to cut through those misconceptions. So what are some of the misconceptions of the people that you work with or that you hear often about podcasting?
First misconception is I don't have anything to say. And let me run through these and then we can talk about them. Wow. I don't have anything to say. No one want to listen to me. And the third is sort of opposite of that. If I build it, they will come. Like immediately massive following. Yeah.
Yes.
So, all three of those.
Interesting.
So, yes, we're just talking about all of that. Yes, you do have something to say. You're an entrepreneur. You have your business. You have your stories. You're a mom. You have all of this amazing stuff to talk about. Yeah. People want to hear about you. They want to hear about how your services and how what you do will help them. Now, again, not infomercials, but the content of your episodes in part comes from what you do in your business. So you may be thinking, oh, I'm going to give away all my secrets. Well, sometimes, yeah, not always. You don't have to give away every little thing, but I'm very, very generous in my podcast. People can listen to my podcast, go and start a podcast totally on their own. Never contact me, never meet me, grow their podcast on their own, do everything on their podcast on their own, all for free. I want to make a good show for my listeners.
Right.
Even if they never work with me at all. That is part of my mission in business, life, and with the podcast. Okay. Don't have anything to say. People won't listen. Yes. Like Angela already said, there's someone for everyone. There are people who want to listen to your show. You can make a great show around you, your stuff, your niche. I'm sure Angela has already been talking to y'all about niching at some point. So and if not, will.
Yeah, maybe I do need to talk about that more, but yeah.
So you have a strong niche in your business. Your podcast can be along that same niche, making it more findable and making it more desirable for people to listen. The tighter the niche, the stronger the show. And then people will want to listen because you'll be giving them exactly what they're looking for to listen to. And then bringing your personality in. You are what makes your show totally unique. Now, if I build it, they will come. Only if you already have a massive following, like massive social media and email list. And if not, then you have to take the time and have the patience to promote it. And that's totally fine. That is normal. You don't just put it up and expect all of these downloads and followers right away, but that's normal. And so you're not going to say, oh, I'm going to try it for a couple of months and see what happens. No, you are going to commit to your podcast. I want to challenge you to commit to it for a year. All right.
Yep.
Give it time.
Yes.
You wouldn't test out your business for just a couple of months. You committed to your business for longer than that.
Right.
So commit to podcasting for longer than that.
Right. Right. And I think there are like so many things coming to my head right now because one, I got really lucky with the niche I found myself in because it was an accidental podcast. I was among a podcasting group and all of the women, but particularly the moms, felt imposter syndrome on a level that was astronomical. And I was on this mission to figure it out. Like, why in the hell are moms feeling this way? We give life. Why do we feel like we are not good enough to start a business or a podcast? Like, what the heck? This makes zero sense.
And normally run the household.
Right.
Exactly. It is like running a business.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had a number of women on this podcast talk about the transferable skills that you learn as a mother that translates to running a business. And I think that that's really powerful. But I found myself comparing, like in this podcasting group, there were some shows that immediately took off and I felt like this big. I was happy for them, but I really felt like, what am I not doing? It's because of my voice. It's because of blah, blah, blah. Nobody, I was scared as heck to have anybody on my podcast or ask them to be on the podcast, even though I had been on podcasts. Nobody has ever said no. I mean, I had one guest that I was literally sweating bullets because she had recently gotten a lot of attention, but diversity on my podcast is very important because I want any type of woman, mom, to be able to listen to the show and identify with somebody on there, because that's how we connect. Is seeing somebody like us doing the things that we want to do. So, but I'm here to say it wasn't within a few episodes. It wasn't even a year before I really started to see some traction. So just as in business, you have to be committed. Like if you're not committed, then don't expect amazing outcomes. And so 100% agree with everything you just said. Yes.
Right. And you've got a great niche. It's fantastic. And a really good name for your show as well. Yeah. Naming is important.
I thought my name was not great, but I really struggled with the name.
We are always critiquing ourselves in our shows.
We are, but I mean, I will just say, I'm not here to pat myself on the back or anything, but that is a comment that I've heard. And so I'm a person who's very intuitive and I go with my intuition and I can change it on the back end. Like that is another amazing thing about podcasting. You recently came out with a new logo. I love it. It looks amazing. I love your branding. But that is something that is awesome about podcasting is you can change the title. You can change your artwork. You can re-record your intro. You can
and change anything and everything anytime. You don't want to be doing it all the time, but like with episode titles, I do recommend doing that. Like if an episode isn't doing as well as you thought it was going to do, go change the title.
Yes, 100%.
Anytime. Don't go change your podcast name willy-nilly, but you can rebrand. Like you said, I just got a new, I don't remember how long ago now, but it's been at least a month, a new logo and cover art for my show.
Yeah. It looks amazing.
Did a big announcement, previewed it and everything. So built up the buzz around it and so happy with it.
It's incredible. And that's another thing that I think is really important that I didn't do in the beginning, that anybody thinking about this process or is in the process, don't look at each episode. Don't put it so much gravity around each episode you do, but see it as part of a bigger vision. See it as you're building the blocks, and at some point you're going to be able to look back and see a house. You're going to, what you have built, so that's incredible. Yeah. So I would love to hear, what are some of the things that you think make a great podcast host if somebody is starting to start a podcast?
Have a strong why. Know really why you're doing the show. And so, yes, it can be to establish myself as a thought leader or to get more clients. It can be really specific and concrete, or, business related, with a measurable return on investment, if you will, something like that. What I really like to see, though, is a why that is listener centric, because that really keeps you motivated when the podcasting gets tough, when you feel like giving up, if you're not seeing the numbers growing like you want, if you're getting frustrated, having a why that is really listener centric reminds you, oh my gosh, my listeners are there. Even if it's not many at first, they are there. And there are others out there who just don't know yet. But when they find the show, here is this awesome little show that they're going to love. So your why, just based on what I've read in the description, is along the lines of, I'm imagining, to help moms start and flourish as the CEO of their business while managing the challenges of motherhood and family. Is that right?
Yep. Minus the perfectionism, minus the, all of the stress that we put on ourselves, and just breaking through all of that by incorporating a new mindset.
Yeah. So when podcasting has gotten tough for you, is it more helpful for you to think about, I'm doing this show to get more clients, or I'm doing this show to help all of those moms out there?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I became an accidental coach. My goal wasn't even to be a business coach. I was talking to myself. I was saying encouraging things just to keep myself going in my other business. And that's just 100% true. And I recommend that anybody who is struggling with confidence in their business or whatever you're doing, is to take that vision off of yourself and to focus on the service. And honestly, if that is your focus, you're going to flourish, because all the fear comes when we are focusing on ourselves. Just forget it. And
I love that you said that, because when I have people come up with podcasting goals, fine, set concrete measurable goals, but your number one goal don't should yourself. What I recommend is the number one goal is that why. So for you, my number one goal is to help women start and flourish as CEO of their own business, all of that. You achieve that goal every single time you put out a podcast episode. Every single time. How good does that feel? You're achieving your number one podcasting goal. Oh my God.
It's crazy.
That's awesome.
I mean,
that is freaking awesome.
Yeah. I have authors and speakers who, before we start talking, they're like, thank you for doing this podcast. And I'm like, what? It's incredible. But because I have always envisioned that woman, myself, just like myself, with a baby on my hip, with all of these ideas and things to share, who felt absolutely powerless. And it's garbage. It's a total lie that your brain tells yourself, or we co-sign, all of these expectations and things in society and from our families. It's just, it's ridiculous.
Exactly. So what makes a great podcast host? Keeping their listener front of mind all the time.
Absolutely.
That's what makes a great podcast host.
I think it is, because I talk to, as a piggyback to this episode, there is a new podcaster I especially love who I talked to recently, and I asked her how she overcomes her fear, because she's in that really important first 10 episodes phase. And I think it's important for me to support other women, especially in that critical time. And she said, and she has her podcast is Everybody's Gotta Eat. And she loves supporting moms who are dealing with the overwhelm of cooking meals for their family. I love this podcast so much.
So good.
And she imagines a mom who is stressed and overwhelmed preparing meals for their family. Like that is her vision.
Mm.
So yes, find that why, find that
what
vision.
A great niche.
Oh, I know. Her podcast is amazing.
I still deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are 28, 26, so they live in different states, and a 16-year-old son, and it's just us. I'm divorced. But I still, like, I love doing my work. And it finally comes around. It's like, oh my God, it's dinner time.
Right.
And I even write out a list of potential meals for the week.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I do not feel like cooking. I used to love cooking. And now I don't know. I've just gotten to this stage where it's like, does he really have to eat? You know, that whole thing. Do they have to eat again? Those memes. I love them.
Well, yeah.
He's 16 and I'm going through this phase again of,
I know. I mean, I have a neurodivergent family and food is a constant struggle. And I didn't early on, I put all this pressure on meals and I put pressure on myself as a mom. We don't realize how much is put on us just preparing meals. But she thought it was too simple and she didn't listen to her friends. And finally her friends were like, you must do this. Plus she's a military spouse like I used to be. So I mean, I'm just like, girl, you're amazing. So, I mean,
that's great.
Yes, it is so important, but we think it has to be complicated. It has to be hard. It doesn't.
I love that you brought this up because it really does show there are so many topics that are awesome.
Yes.
Especially a niche like that. And something that seems easy to us, other people need help with.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. Love it.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's so wonderful that somebody could easily think that that's overly crowded and too many people are doing it already. No.
No. And even if there are some other podcasts in that similar niche, there are only like 400,000 active podcasts. So when you hear that 2 to 4 million podcasts, the majority of those are dead, meaning they are not producing new episodes.
Right.
When you think about how many blogs there are out there, podcasts make up, I think it's less than 1%. Podcasts make up less than 1% of all blogs. I think that's the number. It could be 0.1.
Wow.
So let's say 1 to be safe, less than 1.
Wow.
So people are still starting blogs left and right.
Right. Sure. I don't think blogging
that's hard to be
dead.
Found.
Right.
So podcast, massive room for growth. Massive.
Right. Yes. I love it. So what do you think podcasting looks for? The future of podcasting looks for women, female podcasters?
Tons of room.
Yeah.
Growth. Yeah. We need more women to be moving into it with fabulous ideas like that.
Yes.
It would be great if we can create these new, really unique niches. And if not, that is okay. You know, if you were thinking about starting a marketing podcast, niched down other than just marketing, but in a crowded field, that is fine.
Right.
Listeners want your voice.
Right.
And if you can come up with some topic that is not being done before, totally awesome. You are creating that niche and creating the market for it, because even if it's not something people have looked for yet, you spread the word and then other people spread the word for you. Hey, did you know that you can now get a podcast on 2 ways to feed, for moms to feed their families?
Right. So what role do you think marketing has played in your excellence in podcasting and growing your business. And how does that fit in? What are some of the misconceptions about how podcasting fits in with marketing and business growth?
So I first got into marketing in 1999 when I first became an entrepreneur for real as a marketing consultant. So marketing has infused like everything I've done since then, no matter what I've done as an entrepreneur between marketing consultant and podcast consultant now. I think so many people don't like or say they don't like marketing because they associate it with being salesy. And for me, marketing is education with emotion. So with a podcast, you are, all right, there are two things going on. You have to market your podcast, even when your podcast is a marketing arm of your business. You can't just start the podcast and not tell anyone about it. No, so it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So there are steps that into the pre-launch phase of your podcast. You have to sort of like promoting a movie with a movie trailer, all that buzz. You do that with your podcast. And then once the podcast comes out, effective ways to share the episodes, to build buzz with those, and to get your current listeners listening and get more listeners beyond that. So you are marketing your show. And then you are marketing services, or like I mentioned earlier, Facebook group, free or paid webinars, whatever you want in your podcast. And there are certain ways to do that, very good ways to do it. And so that's marketing. And you're not being salesy about it. Again, it's educating, putting emotion in there. So you are talking about someone's frustration, with a woman's frustration with, or they're tired of being tired all the time. If you're promoting a 6-week program on better hormone health, and so tired of being tired all the time, frustrated with mood changes, and they dream of having a good night's sleep, right? You hear the emotion in there and the benefits. So that type of thing. So marketing is essential with a podcast, for the podcast, and using your podcast as a marketing tool for your business.
Yes.
And it can be fun. Marketing can be fun. It's hard when we're promoting ourselves, but I feel like it's easier with a podcast because the podcast is free. You can have a paid subscription for your podcast. But when it's free, it's so easy because it's to market, because it mentally, mindset wise, it's easier to market because it's so valuable and it's free. So you are helping people with it. You're not saying buy this, or give me your email address to get the lead magnet. Saying here, just open up your app and there it is.
Yeah. And I had a social media marketing expert on the podcast once, and she put it really in a way that I think moms could connect with. She's like, you talk about your babies, you show pictures of your babies, your business, your podcast, those are your babies too. So talk about those.
Yes, and, that's great.
Put it out there. Don't hide it. It goes back to your why. I think you always 100% agree with having a strong why and just focusing on that, and you're helping somebody. And if they don't find you, they will find somebody else.
Exactly. That's great point. If you aren't sharing your show, somebody will find someone else's show. Yeah, absolutely.
So why shouldn't it be yours?
That's great.
So let's talk about what you're doing now with Podfest Global. I'm so excited. I'm signing up. I can't wait to participate. And we're talking about podcasting, and another one of the unexpected benefits is that you are all of a sudden a part of this bigger podcasting community. So you're going to be a speaker at PodFest Global coming up on March 27th. So yeah, talk about that.
First, you are so right that like being a podcaster, you are just immediately part of this amazing podcasting community. Podcast hosts are so generous and so open. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? Even if you don't do PodFest or any podcasting conferences, you can just reach out and connect. Even if you don't have guests on your show, reach out to other hosts and connect and chat, become friends and all of that. It's truly, you can do it. So my talk at PodFest Global, the online event, is called The Shower Effect: How to Use Systems to Fuel Your Podcast to Boost Creativity and Prevent Burnout.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yes, that's awesome, because that...
I used to hate systems. Oh, you go on. Sorry.
Oh, no. We froze for a second.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I used to hate systems. I'm also a professional side, so I like more spontaneity. I used to like having an empty calendar and just winging things. And of course, I know what to do in my podcast. You do this, 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 and this. And over the years, I would forget to do one important step or this, that, and the other. It's like, oh my God, Kel, come on. And I realized that I already have a system in the shower. Everything is in the right place if no one moves anything. And so I don't have to think about it. Shampoo, conditioner, body, face. Shampoo, conditioner, body, face. And I'm super creative in the shower. If you don't have to think about anything, your mind can be more creative and you just get thoughts and ideas, right? We're all brilliant in the shower. So I love systems now. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. What systems you need for your podcast, how having systems prevents burnout, and how it can make you more creative.
I love that, because it can be a lot to manage and all of that stuff. Well, I love that. I can't wait to tune in, and we'll include links to how you can sign up and all of that good stuff in the show notes. So I want to talk about really quick about how entrepreneurship, we're a mompreneur podcast. So how has all of this affected you as a mom?
So I have just loved the massive benefit of being able to control my own schedule, having that time freedom, being an entrepreneur. That is really the number one thing to me. I mean, just personally, even aside from having kids, time freedom is massive to me. Honestly, I never had a full-time job. The closest thing I've had to it was one of my first consulting gigs. They wanted me to be in it was a big company, and they wanted me to be in their office most of the time. And so I did at first. And then I told them, I really don't have to be here. Here's what I'm working on. I can do this from home, and I'll come in, and we set up a schedule to report to you. I'm like, okay. And wow, everything changed at that point. That was in around like 2000. My goodness. And so to have that time freedom to see my kids more, to make the time for my business baby and my actual human babies.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It's such a book about all these years that I've had with them. And I'm sorry, I'm not eloquent about this part.
That's okay. I mean, I think it speaks to how much it impacts you.
Yeah. I can imagine working outside the home with, part-time or full-time job. And it scares the crud out of me. It always has.
Right.
And so that's always motivated me to get my butt into gear with my business.
Right.
Like I feel that right now, like imagining. And I have massive empathy for everyone, for moms who don't want to work outside the home, but have to.
Right.
And who would really rather be at home doing their own thing.
Right. And that's what fuels me so much is that, as a military spouse and a mom, I felt like I didn't have options. And I want to empower, especially those women who don't want to return to a 9-to-5 and want that flexibility and don't have to give into that perception that they do have to work a 9-to-5. I really, really want to empower those women, especially. So what are your kind of hopes for children in entrepreneurship? Because we're not being entrepreneurs in a vacuum, right? It impacts our children, it impacts our families. So what are your thoughts on that?
My big mission in life is to help people blaze their own trail, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to mean entrepreneurship, but it does easily translate into that. And so my big thing with my kids, my goal for them wasn't to be happy or to be productive members of society or whatever. I mean, yes, but my goal with them was that they blaze their own trail.
Right.
So they define for themselves what that looks like. My oldest daughter, the 28-year-old, is a freelance illustrator. My younger daughter, 26-year-old, she's about to be 27. Yeah, is yoga instructor. She did not go to college. She immediately got a yoga teacher certification.
Yeah. Outdoor
wilderness instructor certified and massage therapist. And she does it all entrepreneurially. And my son, again, 16, he is now learning how to edit audio and video. He does not know what he wants to do later. Totally fine. A little bit frustrating. Not that he doesn't know what to do, but issues. But anyway, he's awesome figuring things out. It is awesome to see that more and more young people are moving toward entrepreneurship. I think because of the economy and the way society is moving, it's becoming more of a necessity. But I think also young people are just tired of putting up with society the way it's been up to now. And I want more time freedom and more flexibility. So I'm going to do my own thing. And awesome.
Yeah.
So I love being a role model for that. Yeah. And incredible. I love that you're doing that to be a role model and aid for other people, moms in particular.
Thank you. I can't think about that because that's so awesome to me. I can't think about it because to me, that's total freedom, right? The autonomy that you're talking about, that entrepreneurship has given you. There is nothing more precious than more time with our children. We don't lay on our deathbed and wish that we had worked more, right?
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
No. So it's spending more time with the people that we love. So talking about that, how do you think podcasting has affected your legacy? I mean, I really think that you are helping other people blaze a trail. Absolutely. Is there anything else that you hope that people learn from you?
That is the one thing that I would want people who know me personally to take from me is that I want people to blaze their own trail. Again, whatever that looks like to them.
Right. Yeah.
So throughout all of my business, entrepreneur history, that's really what I've done. So I think that is what I would want to be known for. I also want to be known for leaving the world a little bit better than how I found it. And I think that my podcasts do that. Yeah. I'm very positive and encouraging, inspiring, and uplifting in Podcast Launchpad. We do that at Geek Girl Soup, even though we'll talk politics occasionally there. when things come up. We talk about diversity, equity, inclusion on that show as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, we tell it like it is when we need to, but it's a fun show. So we're trying to leave the world a little better than a little better than how we found it as well. So
I know I am left a better person having this conversation. And
me too.
One of the things I love about your content and your podcast is you're a model for commanding authority. Like, you own it. And I love that. And that specifically inspires me because I didn't come from a place where, either in my family or the corporate world that I lived in, where that was something like they needed to get that out of your head.
Yeah.
Like, no. You need us. You're only as good as your last mistake. And so I think that you're particularly a model for that. You really command authority, and I appreciate that. And so
thank you so much. I really appreciate your saying that, Angela.
Yeah, I do. You're welcome. And so with that, what piece of inspiration would you want somebody to take away from this podcast? I know we've talked about a lot of inspiring things, but if there's just a little nugget that you want them to walk away with, to stick in their head, what would that be?
Find the courage to bring your voice into the world in this medium.
Yeah.
Find the courage to start your own podcast. You have it within you to do it.
You do.
You have something awesome to say.
Yeah.
You are uniquely qualified, literally, to share your message.
Yes.
And there is an audience that wants to hear you and your message.
100%. And you definitely are qualified to help them take, we think things have to be hard. They don't. So reach out and connect with people who are your person, that you connect with and resonate with you. So if you are somebody's person and they want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Go to my website at angelakellysmith.com. That easy.
Great place. Yep. And I love, if anybody's heard snoring, we both have podcasts.
Yes, we do.
And I have one back there. There is.
Oh, too
sweet.
Cute.
Yeah. And I have another black Persian who was snoring here a few moments ago. So if anybody heard that, that's what that was. So Kelly,
I used to have one who would snore during my shows. Yeah.
I have enjoyed this conversation so much. Thank you so much for your time and sharing.
Me too.
Wisdom.
Thank you so much, Angela.
Yep. My pleasure.
This has been awesome.
Yep. I feel the same. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly, for your amazing interview. And I cannot express how grateful I am that such amazing people take time out of their busy lives to have conversations with me, to share with you. So thank you to everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of the show. And I will leave all of Kelly's contact information in the show notes below where you're listening to the podcast. And I would like to invite you, if you enjoyed this episode, if you are enjoying the content, to please leave the show a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And you never know, I might read one of your reviews on the next episode. So thank you so much again for being part of the show, and happy Women's History Month. I mean, I talked to such amazing women this month. I just can't believe it. And I can't wait to bring you all of those interviews. There is a line of exceptional, excellent people who are waiting to come on the show and talk to you. So that means you have to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We usually publish a new episode every Monday. And I can't wait to share my next episode with you. Until then, I'm your host, Angela Mishuli. Have a great one. Bye.